It was a project that was by the people, for the people, and about the people.
It's the people's personal recollections that bring the colour and the dynamic to history.
To be studying something that I want to know about, it's just amazing.
Tomorrow's Built Today.
Lewisham Underwater.
A Caribbean couturier in Lewisham.
Where to Now the Sequins Have Gone.
Invisible Labour.
Pioneers and Protest.
We put out an open call to the public to suggest projects that we could use our funding to support, and we decided eventually on 6 projects, making sure that we had projects that were from the north, the south, the east, the west, trying to encompass all of Lewisham and trying to include voices and perspectives from across the widest range of the population.
A Caribbean couturier in Lewisham was inspired by my mother, Sylvia Prime Holder, having grown up in a creative family and watched my mother make couture dresses and gowns all of my life. I felt that all of the wonderful memories I had of amazing garments that we used to wear when we first came to live in London, none of them were recorded anywhere. I always felt that I was invisible and people like me were invisible. And as a fashion scholar myself, I think it's important that my culture is represented in what I do.
The project is called Tomorrow's Built Today, and it's about the oral history of the self-builders who built these eco-houses in Lewisham. Our co-op was called Fusions Jameen, and we're Europe's largest black-led community self-build for rent scheme. The reason why this is important is because most people are stunned. I mean, people come along and they love, as soon as they see the houses, they can't believe that this was here. But also, I think it shows when ordinary people are supported, they can do something extraordinary. Our rents are 30% below target social housing rents. In terms of tackling fuel poverty, in terms of eco homes, it's an important contribution to the creation of affordable housing.
For me, people's history is about understanding that when we start to look at the actions of otherwise ordinary people, we realise that they're not just sort of passive, acquiescent vehicles for other people's ideas. Everyday people have played their part in some of the most significant events in Lewisham's history.
My name is Beverly Glean and I'm the Artistic Director of Irie Dance Theatre. The project was based around the Black People's Day of Action, which took place in March 1981 as a result of the New Cross fire that happened in the January of that same year. In 2007, we moved from the Albany to the Moonshot Centre. The building was founded really to cater for the unmet needs, particularly of Caribbean children in the community. The centre was the first place that meetings were held after the fire itself, where the local people really wanted to come together to strategise.
Because it was for the Borough of Culture and it was about trying to represent the whole of Lewisham, we wanted to make sure that the black communities of Lewisham were represented, that LGBT communities were represented.
I'm Paul Green and I'm part of In Living Memory as I'm doing a project called Where to Now the Sequins Have Gone, which is an exploration of the lost gay bars of Lewisham, looking at the people who drank in there and the self-selected families that were built up in those spaces.
But also that there were topics like the floods of 1968.
The project that Quaggy Waterways Action Group and Lewisham Council did was called Lewisham Underwater, and it was looking at the 1968 floods, which were pretty catastrophic for the area. The 15th and 16th of September 1968 saw a huge deluge, large areas of Lewisham Borough underwater overnight. I think that was a turning point in people's understanding that we needed to restore rivers and look after them better. And we brought it bang up to date by talking about flood risk now. The issue hasn't gone away, but the risk is reducing if we restore rivers more and better.
So across the year, these 6 projects have engaged in a huge range of different outreach, public engagement activities, ranging from quite in-depth oral histories.
We did 3 key interviews. One was with my mother, obviously, because she was the inspiration for the whole project. Another one was with a lady, Sister Butler we called her, and an old gentleman, Leo Ford. We got them to tell their story, where they came from, where they learned their skills, what they did, how it was coming to England.
We felt it was important to engage the local community, in particular young people, and also our elders as well, because a lot of them had experienced the fire and the day of action.
Most of the organisations have participated in some form of wider engagement to collect people's memories, appearing at events like People's Day.
The inspiration for the project is an exploration into Lewisham's heritage around family making, community action and maternity services. People's Day was great. I worked with Gillian Rodney, who is a local artist. She had this brilliant idea of making a placard that said, "Do you remember your midwife?" I can't believe how many people did actually remember their midwives and knew their names still.
Being part of the Borough of Culture, one of the really important things for us was that there were cultural outputs from each of these projects. We had exhibitions in the unit of the shopping centre, we've had films made, we've had artworks put up.
So when you enter the exhibition, you've got the Where To Now the Sequence Have Gone, which is a reference to the lost pubs. It's sort of like a funerary piece. We wanted to create a space like this archive that we're in, but bring a sort of a queer sort of aesthetic to it, so that it would be something that was very different to the traditional archives.
One of the projects that we did as part of Lewisham Underwater was a bit of a joke, actually. I kind of said, why don't we do a flood beer? The council seemed to think that was a brilliant idea and set about looking at it, and we teamed up with Brockley Brewery and they brewed a special fresh hop beer. Because you see a lot of hops growing on the river. That connects with history of the area, because a lot of people used to go hop picking to Kent.
So we've got the film, we've got the photo exhibition as well, and each person's individual story is told on that, and people can just see we're ordinary people, we're not superheroes, but we did do something that is absolutely fantastic. And also there's a whole generation of people now in housing need who want to hear these stories. When we showed the film, they were saying they were really inspired by hearing the stories of ourselves.
We also decided to create a mural. I worked with a local artist called Amy Brown and a local arts charity called Arts Network. We invited them to a monoprint making workshop, which we held at the hospital, and it was brilliant. We had a really nice experience exploring the history of the hospital, and it'll be a 6-meter mural on the ground floor at Lewisham Hospital.
So it's been a really busy year for those projects, and each of those events has been so unique and so well attended.
Apart from producing the film, we also had an open day here at Moonshaw. We kind of wanted to look up protests right across the board, whether it's through a march, whether it's through a dance piece, whether it's through writing a song, but that there are kind of different ways that you can have your say or you can have your voice.
We recreated a bedsit that my mother and my family lived in when we first arrived in England. This tiny space that a woman would have lived in with her family, and it would have been our family dwelling, but it was also her workspace. There were some people that came in. One in particular, a lady walked in and burst into tears because it was her mother's bedroom and her mother had not long passed. And then the final big output was our People's Fashion Show. What we wanted was for designers to come wearing something they made, or individuals to come wearing something that was made for them. It was really nice to be able to put a visual towards what I have been saying throughout my project, which is that the Caribbean people that came to live in the borough came with great skills, and although lots of them had to work for factories, lots of them were, in effect, couturiers, even though they would not have had that title.
To watch that translation from a sort of a fact gathering or information data gathering process, these fabulous community projects with all of their talent have taken that material and have turned it into these wonderful, creative, entertaining outputs that have really moved people.
One woman emailed me and just said, thanks for speaking on behalf of the people who have sort of been forgotten by history. Nobody really wants to know their stories, so we wanted to rectify that through this project.
It's a living history. It's not that's something that's in a history book.
Being part of the project, the In Living Memory project for Quag, has opened up a whole different way of reaching people for us.
There were so many people that said, thank you for doing this, Joy. And, and I didn't know that I wasn't just doing this for me, I was doing it for everybody around me as well. So that was really amazing.
When I do local history walks or we've done these projects, people are so interested and excited to hear about the history of Lewisham, but also, of course, they are the history of Lewisham. They have made up the history of Lewisham. Everybody's stories are relevant. Everything that everybody has to tell us has a value and a relevance. Because, of course, once you start to piece them all together, you get this great, big, varied tapestry. As a historian, that to me is the most satisfying outcome we could have possibly wanted from In Living Memory.